the first thing that we'll discuss here in terms of a day in the life, right, in current state is around managing renewals. And we'll focus on a procurement persona, Wendy in this case, specifically as part of this kind of walkthrough. Now, Wendy, she's going to renew an application, there are a number of questions she asks herself as she says, right, how do I make the most out of this renewal and hit my goal of driving value through things like cost savings and consolidation of vendors? One of the first things that Wendy needs to know is, what do I even need to renew, right? And this is where her manual spreadsheet comes in. She thinks she's got a pretty good understanding of those 15 apps, let's say this month, and Zoom is a big one that she knows is coming up. So we'll use that as our example here. So Wendy thinks she knows, right, what a priority for renewal is. She tackles Zoom. Generally, the next thing she knows she needs to solve for is throughout this process, she needs to maximize value. She's just gotten an email from Zoom. They're going to increase her price, but they've said if she adds a few more licenses, they can work with her on it. Either way, Wendy's not sure of what a right license count looks like and kind of where they're at with usage. So she knows she needs to engage the app owner. Now, Wendy does not have this in her spreadsheet. So she spends a lot of time trying to track down who the application owner is, talks to a handful of folks. She finally finds him. It's Steve, right? Her colleague who owns the Zoom application. Wendy gets with Steve and says, who's using this? And how are they using it? I'm trying to renew this application. I need to know, right, what that actual user count is based on what that utilization looks like. Steve is not sure how to get that data. He's never looked at it before. And he says, we're actually also adding headcount. Maybe you should just increase the users. It's better safe than sorry. Now, Wendy, along this journey, she doesn't have a great idea now in terms of usage, but she's also trying to figure out what's a fair price to pay. With only the new price offered by Zoom in hand and no other data points to really go off of, time is running out and Wendy just decides, I'm just going to renew for these additional users. Steve said, right, the team's growing. And I'm going to avoid that per license increase by adding those additional folks. Wendy ends this process with thinking to herself, how can I scale my efforts? I just wasted a lot of time trying to get really basic data to make this business decision. And I still think that I left money on the table. And ultimately the results, when we look at this manual process without, right, the operationalization in the middle, it's time consuming, it's inefficient. She was not able to do any license optimization based on rich utilization data about how folks were actually using Zoom. The contract value ended up going up, so not any cost savings to report. And all this time, she has no idea if there's other similar apps in the organization to compare, right, to Zoom or figure out which one should be the best application to use in the org. And then ultimately, as Wendy does this once and realizes she has 14 more, she knows this is unscalable and she's not going to be able to certainly increase her procurement coverage as she continues down this manual road. So with the idea that there is a path forward to operationalize SaaS management, let's talk about what that could look like. And first, we've got to think about removing those data silos. So instead of a user going straight to purchase, whether it be through an AP solution or expense solution, what if they had a catalog like Zylo App Catalog to look at the applications that exist in their organization first? Now, with the idea that employees are still going to need new applications, there's going to be new business problems that come up. There's still that application request, intake, and purchase process that exists where applications are added, right, to the portfolio within an organization. And they'll also still enter through expense for the same reason. But what if instead of those really key data sources like contract data, the spend associated with the app, the usage, instead of those being immediately siloed, what if they were captured as part of a continual source of truth related to that full comprehensive SaaS inventory? And how would that change the way that this IT persona, right, and procurement persona operate as part of their day-to-day? Let's take a look at how that impacts first procurement when we think about a more proactive approach to renewal management through that single source of truth. And we'll use the exact same example of Zoom here. So Wendy, same question. She needs to know what she renews. Rather than referencing a manual spreadsheet, Wendy has a renewal calendar now that she's built in Zylo, specifically around the apps that she owns, and she gets alerts for any renewals coming up, Zoom being one of them. So she's prepared 90 days in advance. Of course, the same way that she felt about it, right, in the manual world, she wants to maximize value. Zoom is still going to offer her that price increase or the increase of licenses, and she's got to talk to the app owner. But unlike last time, Wendy doesn't have to spend days, hours tracking down the app owner, Steve. It is part of the app information stored right in Zylo as part of that application overview for Zoom. Wendy needs to know, as part of this, just as she approaches that renewal, how users are actually using the app. In this case, she and Steve both have access to this utilization data, and Zylo actually recommends through insights that over 200 licenses are inactive, and there's 50 that can be downgraded because they're not using the full feature set of a more expensive license type. Wendy and Steve agree to deprovision most of those users, leaving space for those new folks that Steve said are joining the org. And they set up a workflow in Zylo to kick off that communication to start to remove those users in advance of renewal. So Wendy feels a whole lot better at this point about what she needs to renew for in terms of licenses, both number and type, to maximize the value as part of that renewal. But now she wants to know what a fair price is to pay. She checks out Zylo benchmark data to gauge what that SKU cost should be and what the average is. But she can also see they have similar applications in their stack. They have MS Teams. Using both of those pieces of information, she's able to negotiate 10% off the average, along with less licenses because she did that optimization exercise. Now, very different from last time, Wendy says, how can I scale these efforts with this key ownership, usage, contract, and spend data in one single source of truth? Wendy can renew every time with confidence and ease. Now, the result of this, rather than reactive, a more proactive, strategic renewal process, the ability to do license optimization at scale and when it really matters, which is right before that renewal. Visibility into redundant or similar applications, MS Teams is an example, to help influence, and give context to that decision. And then ultimately, she was able to drive a price decrease via that benchmarking data that helped her understand what an average SKU cost should be based on their needs.